Imbert reiterates, no missing money in Auditor General impasse, by Gail Alexander. Guardian News, Paper 6, March 2025. There is no missing money. This was pointed out yesterday by Finance Minister Coleman Imbert, who accused opposition Leader Kamla predecessor of making up stories in the impasse between Finance Ministry officials and the Auditor General in the 2023 public accounts matter. He did so in a statement responding to predecessor's recent call for Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley to launch an immediate independent investigation into Imbert's conduct regarding missing billions of taxpayers' dollars. Predecessor's call followed a Privy Council judgment in the Auditor General's favor. The government subsequently dropped its probe into the Auditor General's conduct, detailing the process involved in submitting accounts to the Auditor General, which involved certification by 3 ministry officers. Imbert rebutted 2 of predecessor's claims. The finance minister, therefore, cannot be seriously accused by any right-thinking person of being responsible for any missing money in the financial statements, especially since there is no missing money. That story is an orchestrated campaign being mounted by the opposition to fool the gullible, he said. Imbert, who accused predecessor of clutching at straws, noted that she has been in public life for almost 30 years and must have a proper understanding of the process. Imbert explained that in the annual format, the Auditor General has produced a report on the following financial statements. Statements of the Treasury showing the financial position of the country. 2. Appropriation accounts of individual accounting officers. 3. Statements of receipts and disbursements of individual receivers of revenue. And 4. Financial statements of individual administering officers of funds. He said these statements aren't prepared by a finance minister and are accompanied by a statement of declaration and certification signed by the 3 finance ministry officials, namely the accounting officer, who is the permanent secretary, the comptroller of accounts, and the treasury director. He added, "It is now well established that an unfortunate accounting error was made by officials at the central bank on February 8, 2023, as a result of a failure of software associated with new electronic check clearing system introduced by the central bank in 2023. This error found its way into the public accounts when they were submitted to the Auditor General in January 2024. Again, for the avoidance of doubt, this accounting error was not discovered by the Auditor General's office. Instead, it was discovered by personnel in the Budget Division doing their usual year-end review of the fiscal outturn for 2023 after the accounts were submitted to the Auditor General. Following this discovery, the public servants in the Treasury subsequently attempted to bring the accounting error to the attention of the Auditor General.
We were running on fumes. The previous government maxed out our overdraft at the central bank.
But we only have cash to run the country for 3 days.
Let me come back to this lie that the country only had 3 days worth of money to run. First, we were already in September, which means at the end of that quarter, the oil monies would be coming in. We had about $5.5 billion in the Heritage and Stabilization Fund and over $10 billion in official reserves. So there was no way that you could say that the country had no money and that the treasury was empty. That is one of the big lies that has been propagated together with a series of lies, such as that there's been an economic turnaround. Trust is important. And therefore, if you keep lying, that trust is broken. I first met Minister Imbert 2 weeks after he became Minister of Finance. And that was after repeated requests to meet with him. And at that meeting, Imbert was only interested in one thing. How could he get his hands on CLICO's assets? And when I told him that the central bank had already formulated the CLICO resolution plan, that had basically identified the assets that would be sold, when they would be sold, an estimated price, and we had already informed the public in the interest of transparency and good governance what this plan was all about. He just then became vexed and abruptly ended the meeting and walked out of the room. At no point in time then did we ever discuss the central bank overdraft, We all know that there's no economic turnaround. This country has gone through 5 consecutive years of successive economic contraction. The numbers would show that between 2016 to 2019, we've contracted by almost 10%. A whopping $70 billion has been borrowed by this administration in 5 years. And if we count now the fact that they've raided the Heritage and Stabilization Fund 3 times, so far the total brings us about $1.2 billion taken from the Heritage and Stabilization Fund. And what is key about that is they've taken this money from the HSF, but there's been no accountability as to what it has been spent on. The general reply when Minister Imbert has been asked, well, what have you spent this HSF money on? He says, it's for the General Service at Trinidad and Tobago. Right? So we have no idea where this money has actually gone.
We have approximately $10 billion in official reserves. We have $5.6 billion in the Heritage and Stabilization Fund.
A lot of the ministries have money in bank accounts that the last government borrowed that they couldn't spend because they ran out of time. A lot of the ministries have money in bank accounts that the last government borrowed that they couldn't spend because they ran out of time. A lot of the ministries have money in bank accounts that the last government borrowed that they couldn't spend because they ran out of time. Sport is one of them. Sport had $500 million sitting on in a bank account, believe it or not. But sport had that. So we were able to take $150 million from that bank account and pay for those 3 aquatic centers. So when I come into government, I meet a whole set of loan arrangements for hospitals, for military vessels, for all sorts of things. Billions. Arima Hospital, 1.8 billion. Kuva Hospital, 1.5 billion. Point Fortin Hospital, 1.6 billion. Vessels coming from Holland, 1.3 billion. You know, we ain't sending back nothing, you know. So we ain't sending back no boat. $5 billion in hospital loan, $1.3 billion for vessels from Holland, $250 million from a vessel coming from China, $500 million for some helicopter. All of this on my desk.